What's up guys, this is Evan with Roambuilt. Today we're going to walk through an installation of our Sprinter rear bumper. This is going to fit all models of the Sprinter from 2019 to current. It works with your OEM receiver hitch and you get to keep your trailer wiring plug. If you have parking sensors, it's compatible with those, as well as the blind spot sensors. It has steel mounts for strength and the main bumper itself is aluminum for weight savings and of course no rust. You get the added benefit of a nice step, as well as being able to add some Baja Designs flush mount squadron backup lights if you like. In the box, you'll get the bumper itself, the steel brackets, the hardware kit, as well as the brackets for the blind spot sensor and the cover for the blind spot sensor. And then if you have the parking sensor system, you'll get new housings for the parking sensors. And if you don't have that system, you can use the delete plates instead. As far as tools needed, you'll need basic socket and wrenches, Torx bits, trim tools for removing the plastic, and then a grinder with cutoff wheels so you can remove a couple of the little tabs off the tow hitch. First thing we need to do is remove any sensors, plugs, any wiring that connects the bumper to the van. And I'm going to start with the trailer wiring plug. So I'm going to remove it and then I'm going to clip the zip ties and then I'll be able to unplug it. Next, we're going to take the plastic off. So we're going to leave this and this, but in order to take this bumper cap off, we've got a few of these little plastic rivets, and there's one hidden behind here. So I'm going to pop this off just far enough to release this, and then we need to snap this upper piece out away from the main bumper, and then we can continue taking the bumper off. So we're going to take out this one. There. Then we have a few of these along the underside, one on each side here and then two in the middle. All right, same thing on the other side. Next, we're going to use a T40 Torx bit to take these screws out of the upper perimeter. Now we're ready to set off the old bumper and start swapping over sensors to the new bumper. I like to lay the two bumpers facing the same direction so that I don't get the passenger side and the driver's side swapped. So I'm just going to take out the wiring harness from all its clips and unclip all the parking sensors and the blind spot sensors. And I'm just going to lay the harness out in the same direction so we can put it in the new bumper. As far as the parking sensors go, it's important to pay attention to the orientation. So I'm going to go over that on this van. I'm not sure that all years are the same, so pay attention to yours. But starting at the far passenger side, the wiring for that sensor is facing in towards the center of the bumper. So is the next one and the next one. And then the driver's side three are all the mirror of that. The wiring is pointing towards the center. So like I said, that may not always be the case, but pay attention to how yours is so you can put it in the new bumper in the same way. This blind spot sensor is held in at the top by a circle that captures a little tab. So we'll lift up on the plastic and let this come out. And then it needs to come up to get out of the little pockets in the side that it's in. The parking sensors have a top and bottom tab that need to be spread apart. And if you're not reusing this bumper, you don't have to worry about messing it up. But if you are going to reuse the bumper or sell it, you may not want to bend these tabs too much. Then just work your way along and free the wiring harness up from the little catches that it's in. That should be everything we need from this stock bumper. So now we'll go ahead and put the sensors in their housings and put that in the bumper. So we'll start with the blind spot sensor housing. The only difference is it has a small notch at the top and a wide notch at the bottom. You can really only put this in one way. Just make sure that you have the actual sensor itself facing outward. So this back part with the sticker is going to go into the housing. That small notch is for that little tab and the big notch is for the wiring. Then you lay the cover plate over it, and the entire assembly will bolt in place. Now I put in a bolt from the outside, then a flat washer and a lock nut on the inside. Make sure to route your whole harness through the bumper before you do this. That way the wires are on the correct side of the mounts. For the parking sensors, they'll use this housing, and you put the housing into the bumper from the front side first. Once it's installed in the bumper, then you snap the sensor itself into the housing, and it just goes in from the back until it clicks. So we'll go ahead and snap these in the bumper. There are 2 ridges on the top and 2 notches in the circular cutout to designate where those ridges go, so you can't put them in wrong. I'm going to run my harness inside the mount. Remember, our parking sensor wiring end was facing towards the center of the bumper, so we'll put it in like this. It's clipped in place. We'll do the same thing for the rest of the bumper and mirror it on the other side. You also have your trailer wiring plug, but you don't want to put this in until it's actually plugged in to the wiring harness. It's kind of a tight squeeze back in here, so you'll do this after you've bolted the bumper on. You'll kind of install it as you plug it together and then put the bolts in. And then if you are doing lights, it's a lot easier to do them now. You can do them after the bumper's on, but just to show you, this is the Baja Designs flush mount Squadron. At this point, we're going to pull the tow hitch off and do the modifications necessary. Next, we're going to drop the hitch to do a few modifications. So this little tab here is in the way, and then since we relocated the wiring plug, we're going to take this off too, so it's just a couple quick cuts. We have to take the bolts out of the hitch to do the install anyway. We've provided new bolts, so it's easiest in my opinion just to take this completely off the van and set it on the ground or on a workbench to do the modifications. You could do it on the van if you wanted, but you'd need to be more careful with your grinder. So it's just an 18mm wrench and socket, and we're going to take 4 bolts out per side. When I'm doing this by myself on the ground, I leave 1 bolt in for each side and kind of let it swing down. Then I can support it and take the last bolts out. Of course, it's a lot easier if you have a helper. Now I'm going to take out this side.
Okay. Got it?
All right. This piece we're going to cut completely off at the weld. I like to score almost all the way through the top 2 welds and the same 2 welds on the bottom, and then there's one on the side that you can cut all the way through. Just be careful that you don't actually cut into the hitch, because this is the support for your receiver. If you cut into it with the wheel, I'd recommend welding up that cut, but it's better just to be careful with your cut and grind off the weld. As far as this goes, I don't want to try to clean out this entire inner weld, so I'm just going to make a line and try to cut it pretty much flush with the crossbar, and then I'll grind it smooth. Hit this with a little bit of black spray paint and then go to lunch while it dries. All right, now we're going to hang this back on the frame. We're going to use the new hardware, the bolt and the flat washer, and And once we get it up in there, we're going to put the bolts from the inside out, because in a little bit we're going to need to hang our bumper mounts on it, and these will act like studs sticking out from the frame. So we're going to put the receiver in with all 8 bolts, but no nuts or washers on the outside, so just bolts only. All right, I'm going to get a couple in per side just to get it started and then come back. Inside of the frame rail. Next, we're going to stick the mounts on those 4 bolts that are sticking out from the frame. The mounts are going to be on the outside of the frame, and there's also a little D and a P cut into these so you can tell which is driver and which is passenger, but it's pretty self-explanatory. So this will just slide over the bolts and hold itself in place. We'll put a flat washer, lock washer, and nut on each of these. For now, I'm just going to snug these down a little bit. As far as adjustability goes, those holes are slotted front to back. I'm going to start with the mount pushed all the way back towards the back of the van and pushed up until it's basically flush with the inside of the back of the body. As far as the rest of the adjustability goes, these holes are slotted horizontally. The holes in the bumper are slotted vertically. So between these 3 slots, you have all 3 planes of adjustability. So again, you don't have to completely tighten these down because we may adjust it again in a little bit, but just get a couple of them snug on each side. It's a 19mm or 3/4 inch tool. Now it's time to set the bumper on. We're going to use these 1/2-inch bolts. For adjustability purposes, I'm going to start just by putting the bottom 2 in because they're the easiest, and I like to have the bolts facing forward so that you can get to the nuts really easily. So I'm going to hang it on there, started with just the bottom 2. Now that it's safely supported, I'm going to put the rest of the bolts in, but I'm not going to tighten any of them down yet until we get it adjusted. Before we adjust it, we're just going to fish these wires up over the hitch. If we don't do it now, they could potentially get pinched between the bumper and the hitch. And then the trailer wiring harness is going to go over the hitch from the back side, and we'll just put it through here for now. Make sure this is all tucked up where it needs to be. Okay. Now for adjusting this, in order to get the bumper far enough forward, we need to get the top lip of the bumper kind of up and over this bubbled out spot of the body. So we'll lift it, see how it went up and forward just then. And then to center it, we're going to use the gap between this upright and the door on each side and just try to match that. So I'm going for center left to right and up on top of this little bump out. So we're just going to kind of get it lifted into place and start snugging bolts down as we go. Again, I don't want to get it completely tight because this is still a fine-tuning process, but now that it's where it belongs, there should be some slack that we can take up with the bolts. So I like the left-right adjustment and I like the vertical adjustment. You can see if you come around here, I'm a little bit too tight. That's going to be in the frame side. So once we snug the bumper down to the mounts, then we'll come back and loosen the bolts through the frame and shift the entire thing back just a little bit. And it also looks like we need to rotate it just a little bit rearward at the top so that these 2 lines are parallel and these 2 lines are parallel. But now I feel pretty good about tightening down the bumper to the mounts to keep the bulk of the adjustment where it's at. So right now I've got it just where I want it. I've got maybe about a 1/2 inch here and also on the top, or just a little bit less. The gap itself isn't important. You could have a bigger gap or a tighter gap. What is important to me at least is that the lines are parallel so it doesn't look like the bumper's rotated forward, or even worse, if it's rotated back, it kind of looks saggy. So we want to keep it as crisp as possible. So now I'm going to tighten down this side and try to match the other side. All right. This will be a back and forth process. It's really close, but my passenger side's down just a little bit, so now that I've got the driver's side tight, I'm going to fine tune the passenger side. And each time I raise this side, it'll kind of cantilever and drop that side just by a little bit, but maybe with 2 or 3 back and forths, we'll get it just where we want it. I'm only tightening down 1 bolt at a time. After doing that process back and forth 2 to 3 times, now we have it right where we like it. We'll go ahead and tighten all the rest of the bolts down. Now it's time to install the trailer plug. Don't forget to push the little safety clip back in. Then we're going to use the supplied bolts from the hardware kit. Last thing under here is to plug these plugs back together and zip tie up any loose wires. That's backwards? Yep. One of my favorite quick parking sensor tests is just to put it in reverse and have somebody walk around the back and just watch as the sensors pick him up. That wraps it up. As always, go back through and make sure that all your bolts are tightened down, that all your harnesses are plugged back in, and then on a test drive, make sure that your sensor systems are functioning properly. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, reach out to us at roambuilt.com.